When you ask, hey, what makes a high-performing team? Or have you been in a high-performing team? People often say, yes, I've been in a sports team. And that's a high-performing team. But occasionally, you get someone who says, I've been in a band or a music company or a dance group as high-performing. And that got me thinking, the best teams I've been in, and the worst, have been bands. And so I started a couple of years ago thinking, what can we learn from bands about team performance? Turns out you can learn a lot. And I'm not saying you can't learn stuff from sports teams, right? You can. But actually, when you look at bands operate more in an organization than how organizational teams operate more than sports teams. Sports teams, there's rules, and they don't change much over the years, and you've got lines in and out, and you've got one set of goals, and you've got an umpire, a referee. It's a clear scoreboard, win or lose. But actually, when you're in an organization, you don't have referees or line calls, and your goals shift all the time. It's quite ambiguous, and that's how bands operate as well. So, look, I could talk for you for an hour and a half on this, but I'm not going to. I pared it down to 20 minutes. 8 slides, you'd be happy to know. So I'm going to take you through 4 lessons on what you can learn from bands about team performance. So, first of all, who can name this band? Aerosmith. Yeah, this is the second highest rating, or that they sold second to most albums in the US than any other band, right? Hugely successful. They've been going for 45 years, 47 years now, the same 5 members. What can they teach us about team performance, you ask? Well, very simple. What you find, there's heaps of research that says, and this is research of scientific teams through to teams that are putting on Broadway productions, thousands of teams, and it says, without a change in personnel in a team, what you can predict over time is that performance and creativity just drops down. Why is that? A couple of reasons. One, the first is actually sometimes a team, you get a dominant voice or dominant voices, right? And they often drown out other points of view. So that starts carrying the day. Or over time, you get, relationship, and people get to be friends and they get collegial. And sometimes they don't actually have constructive dialogue or test each other ideas because they want to be nice to each other. So you kind of get convergent thinking. But these guys here, this lovely man here, Steve Tyler. This guy is Joe Perry. And they are complete opposites. Steve Tyler's a perfectionist. He just loves things buttoned down. He rehearses, he practices. Joe Perry, he's a loosey-goosey, improvisational kind of cat. You'd think in a band that would be, a recipe for pulling things apart, wouldn't you? But very early on, they recognized that if they manage that tension really well, there's a much better creative spot than if either one of those kind of dominant views played out. And Steve Tyler's got this great quote. He said, you want differences in a band because differences make the sparks fly and gets the creative wheel turning. And that's true inside of teams too, isn't it? You actually want that diversity. You want those different views because if you don't get it, you kind of get groupthink and your creativity starts narrowing down. Here's a couple of other examples from rock and roll. These 2 old geezers up here. Mick Jagger, graduate of the London School of Economics. Keith, graduate of the International School of Hedonism. Completely different, right? And sometimes they don't even like each other, but they have a huge respect for what each brings to that band. And that's a high-performing band, right? It's been going for years, and it's incredibly successful. Depeche Mode, the world's most successful electronic band. Those guys have a lot of constructive conflict. They're still going. They've just been touring Europe, selling out all the time. They've been going for 30 years as well. So that's the first lesson that bands can teach us. Champion constructive conflict. It's your friend. Constructive conflict, right? You really want that. So that brings us to the second thing. What can we learn about the second thing about bands is that you could say if you've got all this, different points of view happening and tensions, the bands could fly apart or implode or explode. And often they do, right? Often they do. You imagine you're in a band and you're not talking about, the Red Hot Chili Peppers or these guys, the Rolling Stones, but a band touring New Zealand or Australia or America. You're in a van 8 hours a day. You come to a place like this, you load in, you play, you load out, you finish at 2 o'clock, you sleep in a 2-star motel with the drummer and the bass player, and you get up and you do it again. You kind of like 20 hours with each other. Sometimes we go nuts with 8 hours with our colleagues, right? What can keep them together? Well, it's actually this idea here. Actually, having a transcendent purpose. Those bands, they know why they're together. It's that joy of music, right? It's that passion for playing that rock and roll music or that electronic music. They're there because they know why they're there together. They love that. It keeps them there. And there's a burning ambition that gets them through those motels and those long trips, right? Maybe it's to crack a record deal or to play Glastonbury or some kind of goal that keeps them going forward, that transcends all the niggles and all the tensions. So again, what we can learn from bands, if you're a team leader or in a team itself, how do we know why we're together as a team? What are we here to achieve? What's our ambition? What's the purpose and the goal for this whole team, not the individuals in it? What are we working towards? So that's the second thing we can learn from bands. Transcendent purpose and burning ambition. All right, free beer to somebody who can name all these bands or musicians up here. Bruce Springsteen. Netherlands Darcy Toys. Beatles up there. No. New Zealand band. I love my leather jacket. The Chills. And the Eagles. Now, that's an assortment of bands, right? That's an interesting assortment of bands. Now, what's interesting is that they have different approaches to decision-making leadership. Over here, you have, this guy's called the boss because there's a good reason. He's the boss because he decides what the band does. He talks to people, he gets East Street Band's input, but he decides. And if you ever see Bruce Springsteen concert, you know that everybody in that band gets their moment to shine on stage, right? But everyone knows he makes the decision. There's clarity about the decision-making. The Chills, that's always been Martin Phillips' band, right? I mean, the Chills have gone through, more lineup changes than, the All Black captaincy. But when you join that band, you know it's Martin's band. And you know that. If you go and your eyes wide open. So there's clarity about that. These lovely gentlemen here, they're 5 guys who can all sing really well and are all songwriters. You imagine the Eagles, in their heyday, they're making records. How do you decide which record gets on to the next album? What's that decision-making? Well, they had a decision-making process. They said, 2 things. Song power. Everyone brings their songs along, and it's got to be, if the song has got the power to get on the record, it's going to get on the record. If that song doesn't quite match it, it's gone. And then the decision, who's going to sing it? And their second principle was what best serves the song. So this guy here, Don Felder, he wrote a lot of the tunes. He wrote the tune to Hotel California, all that kind of stuff. But he wanted to sing a lot of the songs that he wrote. And he would come along and people would say, you're good, but actually when Don Henley sings it, it sounds fantastic. So they used that protocol to help decide what songs to go on and who's to sing it. So clear was that Don actually left the band because he said, I'm not getting my ability to have my self-expression and doing that. So he left the band and then he came back and he still writes songs. He sometimes didn't get through and he left the band again. But again, there's clarity about decision-making. These boys down here, they're the World Dancing Toys. I put them there because I know these guys well. I was at university with them and I played support act to them and quite a lot in Dunedin and travel around the country with my guitar. I go on before them playing weird kind of hybrid songs, James Taylor Meets the Jam. And, it was great fun. And they had a democratic approach to decision-making. It just wasn't these 4 guys either. There's a guy in the back there, Jed Taylor, he was the lighting man. And Tex Houston was the sound engineer, and they were part of the decision-making team, the Mighty Six. And when they wanted to talk, they would talk about something, they would have great dialogue, and then they'd vote on it, and whatever was decided by the majority, that's what they would do. There was clarity about that. And then last up here, the Beatles, top right, Paul McCartney said recently in an interview, a total democracy. And what he meant by that was a consensus. Paul or John could come along and have a song that they thought was dynamite, but if Ringo didn't like it, they didn't do it. Everyone had to totally agree on it. So what we can learn about bands and successful, enduring bands is actually have clear decision-making. Because if you're not clear about the decision-making protocols, people get toey. They get confused. They get upset. So here's the last lesson. This band here, last beer, free beer, you're not the New Zealand band. Who is this? Supergroove. Yeah, I saw them at Christmas time. They did a vineyard tour. And they were fantastic, man. They were just having a blast up there. And the research I've done on bands, they say, sometimes the pressure of the job and the niggles, what we do is we just go out and we just play. And in that moment, getting back to what we love, that joy of playing music together, all that nonsense just gets forgotten either in that moment, actually long term. And that's a great lesson, I reckon, for teams. Sometimes we do a lot of hooey, and sometimes we don't do enough doey. Doing the stuff that we really love. Sometimes we complain that the organization or the clients aren't bending themselves to suit our world. But actually, maybe you're an architecture company or an IT software company or a policy shop. And sometimes you just want to go out and just do some rocking good policy, right? Let's just rock some policy. Let's rock some software. Let's rock some architecture. You just want to get back to the joy that why you individually bring to that team, and when you're collectively together, actually, what's the magic that you produce? You get back to that. So that's the last lesson I want to share with you today about what bands can teach us about high-performing teams. Rock the work. Rock the work. Hey, look, thank you for that. I'm going to, I hope you enjoyed that. I've enjoyed doing the research on it. And we're also launching, if I get the band back up, our Rocking Team Performance new product. So if you think, I reckon our team could learn things from that. We have this new Rocking Team Performance product, which is a team development day. You basically come into SLT Studios in Wellington with your team, and you get to write your own song and record it. Yeah, or a cover song of your own, a cover song of your choice. I coach you through the dimensions of a high-performing team. We have, the lovely Thomas Oliver, who's a fantastic guitarist and multi-talented guitarist, and he's the musical director. And at the end of the day, you have this fantastic, memorable learning experience, and you have a song at the end of it. And if you're not a musician, well, you find you can do something in that, and you try and find out, you unlock that talent, or you manage the band, you do the press release, you're the vision for the company.
We only said goodbye with words, and I died